member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government's responsible economic management easing pressure on Australians while laying the foundations for future growth, and what approaches were rejected?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thank you to the wonderful member for Gilmore for her question. The member for Gilmore understands that despite the welcome and encouraging progress that we have made on inflation, we know that people are still under cost of living pressure. And that's why we put so much time and effort since we come to office into putting downward pressure on inflation in our economy. And it's why we are pleased, Mr Speaker, that quarterly inflation is now around a third of what we inherited from those opposite, Mr Speaker. Now, a key reason for that is the way that we've gone about managing the budget and the economy in the most responsible way. We have taken pressure off inflation by running a tight budget, the first surplus in 15 years. We turned a $78 billion deficit into a $22 billion surplus. We've seen the fastest and best recovery in the budget bottom line in the G20, comparing the year before we were elected to the year after we were elected. And all of this is saving us on peak debt and interest costs, Mr Speaker. And this is why the IMF, the Reserve Bank and others have pointed to the way that our budget policy is working hand in hand with monetary policy. It's also why the OECD and the Australian Bureau of Stats have gone out of their way to say that our policies are directly reducing inflation in our economy. That's because we designed our cost of living help to take pressure off inflation rather than add to it. And we know the combination of energy bill relief, early childhood education reform and rent assistance took something like half a percentage point off inflation last year. And we know that our tax cuts won't add to the inflation problem either, and it won't add to deficits, but it will boost labour supply in our economy, Mr Speaker. Now, as the Minister said a moment ago and others have said, the Prime Minister, getting on top of inflation, getting real wages moving, rolling out the tax cuts, paying the super on paid parental leave, as Linda White and Peter Murphy urged us to do. All of this is about ensuring people earn more and keep more and retire with more as well. And the reason why the new member for Dunkley sits on this side of the House and not on that side of the House is that we have a plan to ease cost of living pressures, and they don't, Mr Speaker. They don't. If they had their way, inflation would still be galloping, wages would still be stagnating, there'd be debt and deficit as far as the eye can see, and people would be working longer for less, Mr Speaker. And the Dunkley by-election showed, and their behaviour today shows, that their nasty negativity is no substitute for economic credibility, Mr Speaker. Almost 2 years in, and they still have no alternatives except for the economic insanity of their uncosted nuclear fantasy, Mr Speaker. We reject their approach. We're managing the economy, we're managing the budget responsibly, we're making progress on inflation and real wages, we are repairing the budget, we are laying the foundations for growth, and we are cleaning up the mess that they left behind.